I don't have time for this. Tell her to leave. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. Cole Harris didn't even look up from his phone as he spoke. His voice was sharp, his eyes locked on his emails, trying to juggle yet another failing project, an investor pulling out, and the endless pressures mounting in his corner office. He was the CEO of Westgate Enterprises, the golden boy of Silicon Valley. His world was sleek, powerful, and untouchable. He didn't have time for distractions, especially not some random woman claiming she had a business opportunity for him. But Emma, his assistant, hesitated. She was standing in the doorway, looking unsure. Mr. Harris, she insists she has something important to discuss with you. She says it's urgent. Cole exhaled sharply. He was getting sick of these meetings. Another pitch. Another life-changing idea. He knew what this was. Another hopeful entrepreneur thinking they could impress him, wasting his time. He didn't need more people like that. Fine, Cole muttered, glancing up briefly. Give her 2 minutes. And if she starts talking in circles, I'm walking out. Emma nodded, relieved that he hadn't dismissed her outright, and quickly left. It wasn't long before the door opened again, and a woman stepped inside. Cole looked up, already expecting another tired, middle-aged man with a briefcase. But this woman was different. She wasn't in a power suit. No, she wore a simple yet elegant dress that seemed completely out of place in the high-powered, high-stress world Cole lived in. Her hair was pulled back into a neat ponytail, and her expression was calm. Almost too calm for someone walking into a room like his, with a man like him sitting at the helm. She didn't look like anyone who could ever pose a threat to him. No one ever did. I'm Marissa Clark, she said, her voice smooth and even. And I believe we have some business to discuss. Cole eyed her, unimpressed, but his curiosity piqued. You've got 2 minutes, he said flatly, motioning to the empty chair in front of his desk. I'm busy. Marissa didn't sit. She just smiled, almost knowingly. I'm not here to waste your time, Cole. His eyebrow twitched, the skepticism on his face giving way to annoyance. Is that so? Because I'm pretty sure that's what everyone says. Her gaze never wavered. I own a billion-dollar company. Cole didn't even blink. It wasn't that he didn't believe her. It was just that everyone claimed to have more money than they knew what to do with. He didn't need another empty claim to fill up his already overcrowded calendar. Good for you. But what does that have to do with me? His words came out in a sarcastic tone, and he leaned back in his chair, folding his arms over his chest, ready for this to be over. Marissa didn't flinch. She didn't even seem thrown by his attitude. Instead, she stepped forward, her posture confident, and placed a thin, crisp folder on the desk in front of him. Because, Mr. Harris, I'm offering you something more valuable than capital. I'm offering you my expertise. You're failing at your latest project. You know that, right? The words hit him like a cold gust of wind. For a split second, his chest tightened. He quickly hid the unease behind a scoff. I'm doing just fine. What I need is more money to cover for my partners pulling out. That's the problem. Marissa didn't smile. She wasn't trying to win him over with charm or small talk. She was direct, calculating. No. The problem is that you've convinced yourself that you can't go beyond what you've already built. You think this project, this company, will work because you keep making the same mistakes and expecting different results. You're playing it safe. Cole's fingers tightened around the arms of his chair. He wasn't used to being spoken to this way, and certainly not by someone like her. You think you know my business better than me? He asked, his voice lowering. Marissa leaned in slightly. No, I know your business better than you do, and that's why you need me. He opened his mouth to speak but stopped himself. The irritation was still there, thick, but something else had entered the room. Something he couldn't quite place. Her certainty, her calm, the way she held herself, the confidence in her voice. It was unnerving. You don't need more money. You need a partnership. she continued, her tone steady. I'll invest, but only if you're willing to accept help. Real help. The kind that involves risk. You need someone who can guide you through this mess. And I'm that person. Cole stood up abruptly, his chair scraping the floor as he walked to the window. The city stretched out below, a million moving pieces, all of them trying to get ahead, trying to control the chaos. He felt the weight of it pressing against his chest. He couldn't show weakness. Not now. Not to her. What makes you think I need you? I've built this company. I'm not some rookie. You think you're going to walk in here and change my entire business model, just because you've got a couple of dollars to throw around? Marissa followed him to the window, standing a few feet behind him. He could feel the presence of her, steady and unshakable. No, I think I can walk in here because I know exactly what's missing. I know how to get you to the next level. Cole didn't turn around. He didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing him flinch. The silence stretched between them for a long time. The air was thick with tension, and yet, somehow Cole found himself listening. You're too proud to admit it, she said quietly. But you know what's at stake. If you don't make the right choice, this whole company could fall apart. And so could you. He gritted his teeth. He hated that she was right. I don't need anyone to save me, he muttered. Marissa let out a soft breath, as if she'd been waiting for him to say that. No, Cole, you don't need saving. But you do need help. His eyes flicked to the corner of his desk, the pile of papers that had been haunting him for weeks. The signs were there. The problems were piling up. And in the back of his mind, he knew that things weren't just going to magically fix themselves. He needed something else. Something he didn't have yet. He turned, finally facing her. His jaw tightened, but this time it wasn't just pride he was fighting. There was something else lurking in his gaze, a flicker of interest. You think I'll just trust you? Just like that? Cole asked, his voice low, almost dangerous. Marissa's lips curved into a small smile, one that seemed to say she already knew the answer. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to take a chance. Cole stood frozen for a moment, the weight of her words settling in. The woman before him wasn't begging for his attention. She was offering him a lifeline. But could he take it? Cole couldn't shake the feeling that something was off as he walked out of the meeting. He told himself over and over that he wasn't going to entertain this Marissa Clark any longer than he had to. But as the elevator doors closed, a quiet, gnawing feeling settled in his gut. It wasn't like him to let anyone get under his skin, especially someone who wasn't even on his radar. Yet there she was, still in his head. Marissa had left her mark. The offer she made, bold, direct, no nonsense, was everything Cole had always dismissed as a fantasy. Partnership, real help, a lifeline. For a moment, he had been tempted, but he quickly shoved the thought aside. He didn't need help. He didn't need her billion-dollar company, or any of the risks she was offering. But the more he thought about it, the more her words echoed in his mind. You're playing it safe. Was that true? Was he really playing it safe? Cole had spent years building Westgate Enterprises from the ground up, clawing his way to the top. He'd fought tooth and nail for every success, every deal. The idea that he was playing it safe, that someone else, someone like Marissa, could come in and take over what he'd built, stung more than he wanted to admit. He stormed into his office, hoping to shake off the feeling that was now consuming him. But when he saw the file on his desk, the project that had been falling apart for weeks, it all came flooding back. He wasn't playing it safe. He was barely keeping his head above water. The numbers didn't add up. His key partner was about to bail out, and if he didn't come up with a solution fast, Westgate was going to lose everything. As Cole opened the file, his phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at the screen. It was from his CFO, Emily. Emily, we need to talk. ASAP. This is getting worse. His heart sank. He couldn't afford to let this go on any longer. Cole ran his hand through his hair, frustration taking over as he stared at the screen. He needed to make a decision, a real decision. But the only options he could see were already fading fast. He could either fight this alone like he always did, or maybe it was time to stop pretending he didn't need someone like Marissa. Marissa sat in her own office, reviewing the latest market trends, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Cole. She hadn't been able to shake the feeling that their brief conversation hadn't been just another pitch. She hadn't been trying to get him to sign anything. No, this had been something else entirely. She didn't need Cole's money. She didn't need his approval. But she did need someone who wasn't afraid to take risks. Someone who could see beyond the numbers. Someone who could make bold moves without second-guessing themselves. She needed him just as much as he needed her. There was a reason she was here, and she wasn't about to back down. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. "Cole, can we meet again? I have some questions." The corner of her mouth curved into a smile. That afternoon, Cole found himself standing outside her office door once again. This time, the frustration was gone, replaced with a strange sense of curiosity. He knocked lightly. "Come in," Marissa's voice called from the other side. Cole stepped inside, not sure what he expected, but it wasn't what he found. She was sitting at her desk, but she wasn't working. She wasn't doing anything. She was just sitting, waiting. "Marissa," Cole said, his voice guarded. "I need to talk." She raised an eyebrow, her expression calm. "You said you had questions." Cole hesitated for a moment, his arms crossed over his chest. "Yeah, I do. I don't know why I'm here, honestly. I'm not looking for some grand partnership. But you—" He paused, unsure of how to finish. Marissa didn't interrupt. She waited. "I don't know what to think anymore. You came in here today like you knew exactly what I needed. And now I'm sitting here, wondering if I've been fooling myself all this time." He ran a hand over his face. "I've built this company from the ground up. I can't just let someone else come in and take control." Her eyes softened for a second. "You're not letting me take control, Cole. I'm offering you a chance to work together. But only if you're ready for it." "I don't know if I'm ready," he admitted, his voice quieter now. The vulnerability he'd been hiding from was starting to show itself. "You don't have to be. You just have to be willing to take a step forward." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze never leaving his. "Let me help you. Let me help us." Cole was silent for a long time. His fingers drummed against the edge of her desk as he processed her words. This wasn't some small-time investor. This wasn't a rookie making promises. This was a woman who knew the game and was offering him a seat at the table. He couldn't deny that the idea of letting someone in, of finally trusting someone, felt like the most terrifying thing he'd ever done. But it was also the most necessary. "Okay," Cole said finally, his voice low but firm. "Let's talk." Marissa's smile was calm, knowing. "I'm glad to hear that." As Cole sat across from her, he realized something crucial. He wasn't just facing a business decision. He was facing the possibility of something much deeper, trust. And trust, he knew, was the hardest thing to give. The following week, Cole found himself sitting across from Marissa in a sleek conference room, the quiet hum of the city below them, but the tension between them felt anything but quiet. He had agreed to the partnership, but now that it was becoming real, he wasn't sure he was ready for what that meant. "I still don't see how this will work," Cole said, flipping through a set of papers she'd handed him. "You're asking me to change everything. My entire approach." Marissa wasn't fazed by his resistance. She sat back in her chair, relaxed, but her eyes never left him. "I'm not asking you to change everything, Cole. I'm asking you to evolve. Your approach worked for a while, but your business is stagnating. You need to adjust or everything will fall apart." He shook his head, pushing the papers away. "I built this company. I know what works. I don't need someone telling me how to run things." Marissa's gaze was steady, unwavering. "If you could fix it yourself, you would have already. You're stuck, and you know it." The words hit him harder than he cared to admit. He clenched his jaw, refusing to show any sign of vulnerability. But deep down, a small part of him knew she was right. His company was in a tailspin. The pressure was mounting. And the more he tried to control it, the more out of his grasp it felt. But there was no way he was going to let Marissa see how much it bothered him. "You're offering me a lifeline, but I'm not sure I want it," Cole said, his voice colder now. "I've built everything on my own. I don't need someone like you coming in and telling me what to do. Marissa's eyes softened, but her voice didn't waver. I'm not trying to take over, Cole. I'm trying to help you stay in control. You've been playing by the same rules for too long. The world is changing. You have to change with it. Let me help you. Cole stood up abruptly, pacing around the room. He wasn't used to being pushed like this. No one ever questioned him. No one had the audacity. Look, I don't need your advice, he snapped. I don't need anyone else coming in here and telling me how to fix my problems. I'll figure this out on my own. Marissa didn't move, didn't react. She was patient, waiting for him to calm down, waiting for him to see reason. But Cole wasn't ready to let go of his pride. Not yet. He turned to face her, his voice quieter but still filled with resistance. I'm not going to be some puppet on a string, taking orders from someone who thinks they know better than me. She stood up slowly, crossing the room toward him. You don't have to be a puppet, Cole. You don't have to take orders. But you do have to admit that you can't do this on your own anymore. No one can. And that's not a weakness, that's strength. Her words hung in the air between them, challenging him, forcing him to confront the one thing he had been avoiding all along. The idea that he wasn't invincible, that he wasn't the only one with all the answers. But Cole refused to admit it. Not yet. I don't need you, he muttered under his breath, even though part of him knew he was lying. He wasn't just pushing her away. He was pushing away the help he desperately needed. Later that night, Cole sat alone in his apartment, the skyline twinkling outside his window. He ran his hand over his face, exhaustion weighing him down. He'd spent years building this company, fighting for every inch of success. And now it felt like everything was slipping away. He had never been afraid of failure before. But now, for the first time in his career, he was starting to see the cracks. Could she really help me? The thought kept creeping into his mind, but he shoved it aside every time it surfaced. He had done it all alone before, and he was going to do it again. He wasn't going to let anyone take control of his company, of his life. He didn't need anyone's help. He was Cole Harris, CEO of Westgate Enterprises. But as he lay in bed that night, the silence in his apartment pressing down on him, he realized something. His phone buzzed with an alert, a new email. He almost ignored it, but something made him reach for the phone. It was from his CFO, Emily. Emily, we need to talk about the numbers. This is bad. I don't know how much longer we can keep this up. The weight of her words hit him hard. He stared at the screen, his pulse quickening. The situation was worse than he thought. He could feel the walls closing in. He had been running for so long, trying to keep up appearances, trying to hold everything together. But now it was all falling apart. Maybe I do need help, Cole thought to himself. But he quickly pushed the thought away again, frustrated by his own indecision. No, he wasn't ready. Not yet. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't admit it. The next morning, he found himself standing in front of Marissa's office again. His fingers twitched at his sides, an uneasy feeling gnawing at him. He had been fighting this, trying to ignore the fact that he couldn't do this alone. But the more he tried to shut it out, the more it gnawed at him. He knocked lightly, the sound almost too loud in the quiet hallway. Come in, Marissa called. As he walked in, she looked up from her desk, her eyes warm, patient, like she already knew what he was going to say. Cole, she said, her voice calm. I knew you'd be back. He opened his mouth to say something, but the words stuck in his throat. The fight in him was starting to fade, and what remained was something that felt too raw, too vulnerable. He could feel his walls crumbling, and for the first time he wasn't sure if that was a bad thing. Cole stood there, his words caught in his throat. He knew he had to make a choice, but the choice wasn't just about his business. It was about trusting someone else with the future he had spent years building. Could he take the risk? Cole had always been good at keeping people at arm's length. It was how he managed to keep his control. It was how he built Westgate Enterprises from the ground up, by not relying on anyone, by not trusting anyone. He had done it on his own. That was the way he liked it. But now, sitting across from Marissa in her office, everything felt different. She didn't just want to help. She wasn't asking for a temporary fix. She was offering him something more, something that scared him more than he cared to admit. Partnership. Real equal footing. He wasn't used to being on equal terms with anyone, especially not someone like her. "So, what's the plan?" Cole asked, trying to sound confident, but his voice faltered a little. He didn't like it. He didn't like how unsure he felt. Marissa sat back in her chair, calm as always. There was a subtle power to her, a quiet strength that made him both irritated and intrigued. She wasn't pushing him, but she wasn't backing down either. "We'll start small," Marissa said, her eyes locked on him. "You'll bring me in as a silent partner. I'll help you secure the capital you need to stabilize the company, but I'll also be involved in the decision-making. I won't take over. I'm not interested in your power, Cole. I just want to make sure you don't lose it all." He stared at her for a long moment, weighing her words. The plan sounded reasonable, but part of him still bristled at the idea of bringing someone else into the fold, especially someone like her. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. "So, you're offering me a partnership with no strings attached?" She nodded. "Exactly. No strings, no games. Just business." But that didn't sit right with him. Nothing ever came without strings. "I'm not just going to hand over control," Cole muttered. "I built this. Everything in it." "I'm not asking you to hand anything over," Marissa replied calmly. "I'm asking you to share it." Cole's fists tightened at his sides. Sharing wasn't something he did well. He had spent years building Westgate, keeping people out, protecting his vision. The thought of someone else having even the smallest say in his company felt like a threat. But he had to admit it, he needed her. "I don't know, Marissa," he said, his voice low. "I've been on my own this whole time. I don't know what it's like to work with someone else." She leaned forward now, her voice soft but firm. "And I've been doing this for years. I know what you're up against. You don't have to do this alone anymore, Cole." The words hit him harder than he expected. They weren't just business advice, they were personal, almost like she was speaking directly to his core. Cole's mind raced, but he fought to stay composed. "I've done fine on my own," he said, but the edge in his voice was weaker this time. "Hasn't looked fine to me," Marissa said quietly, almost under her breath. It stung more than he wanted to admit. He didn't want to be vulnerable, didn't want to open up about the cracks forming beneath the surface of his empire. But there it was, hanging in the air. She saw him. She saw the things he was trying to ignore. The next few days passed in a blur. Cole tried to bury himself in his work, pushing back against the inevitable thoughts that kept creeping into his mind. But the more he tried to focus, the more he felt the weight of Marissa's words. He couldn't do it alone anymore. The cracks in the foundation of his company were real, and he was running out of time. As much as he hated to admit it, he needed her. On the third day after their meeting, Cole found himself walking into her office once again. This time, there was no avoiding it. He couldn't keep pretending he had everything under control. Marissa looked up from her desk when he walked in, her expression unreadable. "You're back," she said, her voice neutral but with a hint of curiosity. "I've been thinking," Cole said, standing just inside the door. His words felt heavier now, like they were carrying more weight than he wanted to admit. She didn't speak. She just waited. "I can't do this alone." "Not anymore," he said finally, his voice lower than usual. Marissa's expression softened, but there was no smugness. "No, I told you so." She simply nodded. "I'm not going to pretend I know what I'm doing," Cole continued, his voice steady now. "But I'm willing to try, if you're still willing to work with me." Marissa stood up, walking around her desk to stand in front of him. There was no hesitation in her movements, no hesitation in her eyes. She had always been sure of herself, sure of this. "I'm always willing to work with someone who's ready to face the truth," she said, her voice calm but filled with quiet strength. And for the first time in days, Cole felt a weight lift from his chest. It wasn't all figured out. Nothing was. But somehow, in that moment, he knew that this was the right choice. He was ready to share the weight, ready to face the challenge together. But even as Cole accepted the help, a lingering doubt gnawed at him. Could he really trust her? And if he did, Would it be enough to save him? The first few weeks of working together weren't as smooth as Cole had hoped. He kept telling himself it was just a matter of getting used to having someone else in charge. But the truth was, the longer he worked with Marissa, the more his walls began to crack. And he hated it. He couldn't just rely on her. He was the CEO. He was supposed to have all the answers. But every time they sat down for a meeting, it became clearer to him that he didn't. Marissa was the one making the tough calls. She was the one who saw the potential in things Cole couldn't, who could turn problems into solutions with a calm word, a strategic move. She didn't just fix the numbers. She changed the way Cole thought about everything. It was unsettling. At first, he resented how easily she moved through his world. But then, that frustration started to turn into something else. Something softer. Something dangerous. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Cole found himself staring at the file on his desk. The report Marissa had given him earlier was full of bold suggestions, new ideas he hadn't even considered. He should have been angry, annoyed. The report was full of changes he didn't ask for. But instead, he found himself reading through it again, noticing how much better it was than anything he'd put together. "I don't need this," he muttered to himself. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. He knew he needed her. But that didn't make it any easier. The next morning, Cole walked into Marissa's office. His jaw was tight, his mind still wrestling with everything that had happened over the past few weeks. There were still moments when he doubted himself. Moments when he couldn't handle the weight of it all. Marissa was standing by the window when he walked in, her silhouette framed by the city skyline behind her. She didn't turn around, but she knew he was there. "You need something?" she asked without looking up. He hesitated. His hands felt heavy at his sides. The words he wanted to say were stuck, tangled up in his throat. "I just wanted to check in," Cole said finally, his voice stiff. "How's the new approach going?" Marissa turned slowly to face him. She took a step toward him, her expression unreadable. "It's going well," she said simply. "It's working. We're on track to hit our targets. But the real work is just beginning." Cole nodded, though part of him felt a pang of frustration. He should have been the one to get them here. He should have been the one to have everything figured out. But instead, it was her. "You don't like this, do you?" Marissa's voice broke through his thoughts, her gaze steady and searching. He froze. For a moment, he considered denying it. He could have played it off, pretended he was fine. But the truth was, he couldn't do that anymore. "No," Cole said quietly. "I don't. It's not easy for me to trust someone else with my company. I've spent my whole life doing this alone." Marissa's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "You don't have to do it alone anymore." "I didn't ask for your help," Cole snapped, frustration rising. "I didn't want to need anyone. You came in here and just took over, without even asking me what I wanted." Marissa's face didn't change, but her eyes darkened slightly. She took a slow breath, clearly choosing her words carefully. "I didn't come here to take over, Cole. I came here because I knew you needed help. And you do. You need me. You just don't want to admit it." The words hit him harder than he expected. He knew she was right, but the truth stung. The pride that had always kept him afloat was starting to crumble, and it terrified him. He turned away, looking out the window at the city below. It was so easy to pretend everything was fine when you were standing on top of the world. But now that things were falling apart, Cole didn't know how to keep pretending. "I'm not ready for this," he said, his voice quieter now, filled with uncertainty. "I thought I could do it, but I can't. I'm failing." Marissa took a step closer, her voice soft but steady. "You're not failing, Cole. You're just learning how to ask for help. That's the hardest part." Cole closed his eyes for a moment, trying to gather himself. The vulnerability in her words hit him like a wave, washing away the last of his resistance. "I've never been good at asking for help," he admitted, his voice almost a whisper. "I know," Marissa said gently, "but it's okay. You don't have to do everything by yourself anymore. You don't have to carry it all alone." Cole turned back to face her, the weight of the situation settling heavily on his shoulders. For a moment, He thought about walking out of the room, pretending everything was fine again. But he couldn't do it. Not this time. I don't know how to fix this, he said, his voice thick with frustration. I don't know how to be the CEO I used to be, the one who had all the answers. Marissa didn't respond immediately. She stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch light but firm. You don't need to be him anymore, Cole. You just need to be who you are now. And that's enough. He looked at her, his heart racing. Could it be that simple? Could it really be enough to just be himself? But before he could say anything, his phone buzzed, interrupting the moment. It was a text from Emily. Emily, we've got a bigger problem than we thought. The investors are getting restless. They want answers. Fast. The weight of her words slammed into him. All his progress, all his attempts to move forward, felt like they could come crashing down in an instant. Cole felt his chest tighten as he looked at Marissa. This wasn't just about the business anymore. This was about everything, his career, his future, his pride. And now he had to face the truth. He couldn't keep running from the people who were trying to help him. The storm was coming, and no matter how hard Cole tried to fight it, he knew that he couldn't face it alone. But would he be able to trust Marissa enough to let her in? Or was he too far gone to fix the damage? The pressure was building. Cole could feel it in his bones, in every meeting, every phone call, every sleepless night. The weight of everything, the company, the partnership with Marissa, his own pride was suffocating him. He had been playing defense for so long, trying to hold it all together, but it felt like he was losing control at every turn. Started with a phone call. The investors had scheduled an emergency meeting. They wanted answers, and they wanted them fast. The longer Cole sat in his office, the more he could feel the walls closing in. His mind raced. He couldn't avoid them forever. The numbers were too clear. The cracks in Westgate were too obvious. For the first time in a long time, Cole felt that sinking feeling. He didn't know if he could fix this. Marissa had been telling him to face it for weeks, but he wasn't ready. He had pushed her advice aside, tried to cling to the illusion that he could still turn it around on his own. But now, as he stared at the boardroom table, knowing the investors were just a few hours away, the truth was undeniable. He wasn't enough. The knock on his door broke him out of his thoughts. Cole? Marissa's voice was soft, but it cut through him like a knife. She was standing in the doorway, her posture calm but her eyes sharp, like she already knew what was going on inside his head. Yeah, he said, trying to steady his voice. Come in. She stepped inside, her presence filling the room in a way he couldn't ignore. He wanted to ask her to leave, to let him handle it himself, but the words wouldn't come. He was too tired. You got the call, didn't you? Marissa asked, her tone measured. Cole nodded, feeling a rush of frustration build. Yeah, they want answers, and I don't have them. I don't know what I'm supposed to tell them. You don't have to have all the answers, she said, her voice quiet but firm. She crossed the room and took a seat across from him. But you can't keep pretending everything is fine either. You're running out of time. He glared at her. Don't tell me what I'm running out of. I know exactly what's at stake. But you think you know what's best for me, don't you? You think that just because you've been successful, you can walk in here and solve everything. Marissa didn't flinch. I'm not trying to solve everything, Cole. I'm trying to help you see what you can't. You're at the edge. You've been holding on so tightly, but you can't fix this by yourself. I don't need your help, Cole snapped. He stood up suddenly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. I never did. I built this company. I made this work. His heart was racing now. The anger felt easier than the raw fear gnawing at his insides. He wanted to yell, to lash out, to blame someone else for the mess he was in. But deep down, he knew it wasn't anyone's fault but his own. And he was terrified. The meeting with the investors was a disaster. Cole sat at the head of the table, the faces of the key players staring back at him, all waiting for answers. They were disappointed. He could see it in their eyes. They'd given him their trust, their money, and he had failed. Marissa was there, sitting quietly off to the side, observing. She had offered to help him prep for this, but Cole had brushed her off. He didn't need her. Not today. But now, as the room grew tense, as the investors pressed for concrete solutions, Cole realized just how badly he had miscalculated. He couldn't fix this on his own. The numbers were too far gone. The contracts were already crumbling. "You're losing our confidence, Cole," one of the investors said, his voice cutting through the tension. "We gave you a chance, but this isn't working. You need to show us that you have a plan. And fast." Cole's mouth went dry. He was supposed to have a plan. He was supposed to have something to present. But all he had was an overwhelming sense of failure. As the investors continued to speak, Cole's thoughts drifted. He couldn't hear them anymore. All he could think about was how much he had let everyone down. He had built this empire, and now it was slipping away. And he had no idea how to stop it. After the meeting, Cole found himself alone in his office, staring out the window at the city lights below. His phone buzzed on the desk. It was a message from Emily, the CFO. "Emily, the numbers are worse than we thought. We need a miracle, Cole." His fingers clenched around the phone. It was the same message he'd heard over and over again. It's not enough. The weight of his failure was crushing. He wasn't sure how much more he could take. A knock at the door. "Cole?" Marissa's voice was gentle, but he couldn't ignore the concern that had crept into it. He didn't answer immediately. He couldn't. He wasn't sure if he could face her. Not after what had just happened. She walked in anyway. "I didn't mean to push you so hard," she said softly, stepping into the room. "But you're running out of time. And I know." He cut her off, his voice thick. "I know I need help, but I don't know how to fix this. I'm failing, Marissa." Her expression softened, her eyes meeting his. "No, you're not failing. You just have to stop pretending you can do it all alone." Cole's throat tightened. The emotions he had been holding back for so long came rushing to the surface. The fear, the frustration, the shame. "I've lost control," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "I don't know what to do anymore." Marissa stepped closer, her presence grounding him in a way he hadn't expected. She didn't say anything right away. Instead, she just stood there, allowing him to sit in the silence of his own admission. "Cole," she finally said, her voice soft but unwavering. "You can fix this, but you have to trust me, and you have to trust yourself. I believe in you. We can fix this." Cole didn't know if he could trust himself again, but for the first time in a long time he wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to do it alone anymore. The days after the investor meeting were a blur. Cole couldn't sleep. He couldn't focus. His mind kept replaying the same thing over and over again. "I'm failing. I'm losing control." Marissa had stayed out of the way for a while, letting him process everything on his own. But it was obvious to both of them that the situation couldn't continue like this. Not anymore. Cole had always prided himself on being able to make decisions quickly, to see the big picture. But now everything felt clouded. Every choice seemed to lead him down a path he didn't want to go. And for the first time, he couldn't see the way out. He spent most of the day pacing his office, his phone buzzing with messages from Emily and the board. But he couldn't bring himself to answer any of them. What was the point? Every call was just another reminder that he was sinking. But then, just as the sun began to set, Marissa walked into his office again. This time, he didn't tell her to leave. He didn't turn away. Instead, he sat down in the chair opposite her, the weight of everything pressing down on him. "You've been avoiding me," Marissa said, her voice steady but laced with concern. "I can't help you if you don't let me in." Cole rubbed his eyes, exhaustion lining his face. "I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if I can keep going." She didn't say anything at first. She just sat there watching him, waiting for him to say more. He didn't want to admit it, but he felt lost. He felt like he had built his entire life around this company, and now it was slipping away. "I don't want to lose everything," he said quietly, his voice breaking a little. "I don't want to lose this." He gestured around the office, the symbol of his hard work, his success. Marissa leaned forward, her eyes softening as she looked at him. "You don't have to lose it, Cole." But you're going to have to trust me. And you're going to have to trust yourself. You can't do this by yourself anymore. Not like this. I don't know how, he whispered, his heart heavy. Marissa placed a hand on the table between them, the distance between them feeling much closer than it ever had before. It's okay to not know how, but you're never going to find the answers alone. You have to let people help you, Cole. And that's the hardest part. Trusting again. Cole stared at her hand, his chest tightening as he thought about everything that had happened. The failed partnerships, the broken promises, the pride that had kept him from reaching out for help when he needed it most. For the first time in his life, he felt small, and it terrified him. I've always been in control, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I've always been the one who fixed everything. I don't know who I am without that control. Without this company. Marissa's gaze softened. You are more than this company, Cole. You're more than the title you wear. And letting go of the need for control doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. He closed his eyes, a deep sigh escaping his lips. The weight of her words hit him hard. He had been so focused on keeping control, on being the one who made the decisions, that he had forgotten what it meant to actually live, to be present. He had spent so many years pretending he had all the answers, but deep down he knew the truth. He was scared. Scared that without this company he wouldn't be enough. But what if he could still be something else? What if he could let go and build something new? With her help, with people who cared. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about him, about who he was going to become, not just who he had been. The next morning, Cole walked into the boardroom with a new sense of purpose. He wasn't just going to sit there and take the criticism anymore. He wasn't going to pretend like he had everything figured out. For the first time, he was going to let them see him. The real him. I've made a lot of mistakes, Cole began, his voice steady, but the words came out with more vulnerability than he expected. I've been holding on to control for too long, thinking I could do it all alone, but I can't, and that's okay. He met the eyes of the board members, all of them watching him with a mix of surprise and curiosity. I need help, and I've brought in someone who can help guide us through this. Marissa is going to be stepping in to work alongside me. She has the experience, and I trust her. I trust her vision for what this company can be. A murmur ran through the room, but Cole didn't look away. He wasn't going to let fear control him anymore. He was going to trust. I can't promise you everything will be fixed tomorrow, but I can promise that I'm going to do whatever it takes to get us back on track. Together. For the first time, Cole felt something shift inside him. The weight that had been pressing on his chest for weeks was starting to lift. He didn't have all the answers. He might never have them. But he was ready to face the truth. He was ready to ask for help. The room fell silent. And for the first time, Cole wasn't scared of that silence. He felt free. The decision had been made. But the real test was still ahead. Could Cole truly let go of his need for control? Could he trust Marissa enough to build a future together? Or would his fear tear everything apart? The sun was setting behind the office buildings when Cole stepped out of the boardroom. His heart was still pounding from the meeting, but this time, the feeling was different. It wasn't the weight of failure pressing down on him. It was the weight of something new, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Hope. He had made it through the worst of it. The company was still standing, the investors were on board, and the path ahead felt clearer than it had in months. He hadn't done it alone, and that was okay. In fact, it was more than okay. As he walked down the hall, he saw Marissa standing by the elevator. She was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, but when she saw him, a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. You did it, she said, her voice soft but full of pride. Cole didn't smile immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, his gaze holding hers. We did it, he corrected, his voice steady. Marissa raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by his words. We, he nodded. You've been there every step of the way. I couldn't have done this without you. There was a pause, a moment where the weight of everything that had happened hung in the air between them. But this time it didn't feel heavy. It felt like a promise. You know, I wasn't sure if I could do this. If I could trust someone enough to let them in. Cole continued, his voice softer now. But I'm glad I did. I'm glad it was you. Marissa's smile grew wider, a quiet understanding passing between them. She didn't say anything at first. She didn't have to. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and they stepped inside together. The city lights flickered past as the elevator descended, and for the first time, Cole didn't feel the pressure of the world on his shoulders. He felt lighter. A few weeks later, things were different. The company was back on track, thanks to Marissa's guidance and Cole's newfound willingness to trust. He was still CEO, but now he wasn't doing it alone. He looked at his calendar one afternoon and saw a meeting with a new investor group. A smile tugged at his lips as he thought about the future. The future was uncertain, but it didn't scare him anymore. What scared him was not living up to his full potential, and he was no longer afraid of that. Later that night, he found himself at a small cafe with Marissa, their conversations flowing easily, their laughter light and natural. The same tension that had once existed between them, the wall he had built so carefully, was gone. They were partners in every sense of the word. As they sat across from each other, their conversation turned to the future again. This time, it wasn't just about the company. "So, what's next for us?" Cole asked, his voice quieter now, but filled with the kind of curiosity he hadn't had in years. Marissa paused, looking out the window for a moment before answering. "I don't know, but I think we'll figure it out. Together." Cole smiled, feeling something inside him shift. "Together?" he repeated, the word feeling more natural than it ever had before. They both knew that life would continue to bring challenges, that things wouldn't always be easy. But for the first time, Cole didn't have to face them alone. He had a partner. He had someone who saw him for who he truly was, someone who believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. And that made all the difference. Later that night, as Cole walked home through the quiet streets of the city, he found himself thinking about everything he had learned. He had learned to trust, to let go of the fear of losing control, to lean on others. He wasn't the same person he had been when he first met Marissa, and he knew he was better for it. At that moment, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from Marissa. "Marissa, are you thinking about the future, too?" Cole smiled and quickly typed back. "Cole? Yeah. And I'm not afraid of it anymore." He hit send and put his phone away, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time. As he reached his apartment, the door creaked open, and for the first time, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had faced his demons. He had learned to trust, to share, and to be vulnerable. He had learned that it was okay to not have all the answers. And in doing so, he had found something more important than success. He had found balance. He had found a future where he didn't have to choose between who he was and who he could be. As Cole looked at the city skyline one last time before closing his eyes, he knew that the journey wasn't over. There was still more to come. But now he wasn't walking alone. And that made all the difference. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.